Good morning, good afternoon, depending upon what part of the country you're in. Happy Tuesday. Appreciate each and every single one of you spending a few minutes with us today. Really looking forward to today's webinar. We'll go ahead and get started. And really quickly, going to be really brief about this, but in terms of us, right? If you're not aware of us and familiar with what we do, we don't guess. Like everything we do is based on data and analytics in terms of the marketing that we do. And we've been working, we've just recently celebrated our 15-year anniversary. We will work with hundreds of security companies, not even just in the country, but even out of the country as well. And we're not in the marketing industry, we're in the security industry, and it's yours, like it's together. In every single thing, every single move that we make, every single update that we make to our marketing is based on data. It's based on the power of our network. We're also proud members of that of our industry's, our industry's biggest associations. In terms of the groups that we work with, I just mentioned, we work with the entire ecosystem. And really, what we do is we help to build your brand and drive inbound leads. And what that's going to do is help you keep growing as a company. Okay, so if you're not familiar with me and we're not connected on LinkedIn, please scan this QR code. Love to keep this conversation going. I'm a co-founder of SD Marketing. We've been around for 15 years. I've been very blessed and very featured to speak at many of our industry's biggest events. We also have a column in Security Business Magazine. We formerly had a column in SDM Magazine. And I also want to give a big thanks to everyone that it continues to be very kind to Isabella. Isabella reaches out to each and every single one of you to make sure that today's webinar is in your actual calendar. So big thanks, Isabella. Appreciate all of your efforts, as well as our team that helps to make all of this possible. If you'd like to schedule a meeting with me to discuss your marketing, whether you're interested in having us help you with marketing or just want to run through a few things by me, use this QR code to schedule a meeting with me today at your earliest. And then speaking of security business or marketing matters, the latest column is, your best pitch isn't on your website. So scan this QR code and you can read the most recent update on that of the Marketing Matters column that I author on a monthly basis. And just lastly, before we get started, want to give a big thanks to our two sponsors, and first is Recognize, and second is going to be NAPCO. Both of these groups have been longtime supporters and sponsors of our webinar, and I'm forever grateful. I'm very, very appreciative. If you're not familiar with Recognize, they're an entire ecosystem, an entire outdoor video surveillance platform. And when I say video surveillance, I shouldn't say that. More of a visual verification. Now, there's some things that are coming in the pipeline. It's going to be really interesting. And you may have heard that there's a recent merger with that of Vosker, which has significantly expanded that of the overall line and portfolio. But they use AI-based AI-based principles to help filter out that of visual nuisance alarms. If you do anything with video, you do anything with outdoor, you want to give that of our good friends at Recognize a reach out to them and let them know that your good friends at SD Marketing sent you. And then speaking of NAPCO, so once again, I would imagine everyone here is familiar with NAPCO. NAPCO's been around since 1969. And once again, all of us, of course, whether we're running security and or fire and life safety, you can literally run your entire business on that of NAPCO. We've got a huge entire integrated line. And by the way, it expands upon that. So please reach out to our good friends at NAPCO and Recognize, give them a big thanks. Even if you're already doing business with them, please thank them for sponsoring that of this education series, because it helps to make this possible. So big thanks. And then lastly, before we get started into the actual curriculum, and once again, if you've been on these sessions before, you'll know that we want to make these very interactive. So I've got just 3 quick questions. So now is a time where get your phones out. This is not going to be optional. Let me quickly go here. So if you wouldn't mind getting your phones out and scanning this QR code, I've got 3 questions. And keep in mind, these are anonymous. So I don't know how you answer. I want you to answer these honestly. So take into consideration, like there's 3 questions. The first question is, where does your content process break down most? And this is going to be based on one. So where does your content process break down most? Is it you've never had enough ideas? You start, but you don't finish. You publish, but don't distribute, or it stops when you get busy. And we'll leave this up for another few seconds, but where does your content process break down first? Content is really, really important because it allows us to, how do I say this? Allows us to get, to get the good news, to get the good news out And it allows for others, even whether it's our existing customer or that of a prospect, to get to know, like, and trust us. And for those of you that have been in my webinars before, you'll know that I reference that on occasion, at least a few times, every single time I say, but I cannot underscore it enough, especially in today's day and age where it's the advent of AI. And there's just, we've got hundreds, if not thousands, of ads that are hitting us for our businesses as well as for us personally on a daily basis. It's important for us to stand out and to humanize ourselves. So, before I move on really quickly, so it's like I start, but I don't finish, which is a little over half. It stops when I get busy. Okay. I mean, I understand why. I never have enough ideas. Okay. The good news is, we're going to talk about all of these. And I publish but don't distribute. Okay. Well, uh, I will just want to really quickly touch on this. It stops when I get busy. Keep in mind, it's important to not just be in this, call it marketing mode, content creation mode, when call it time, when you need them. It's like the best time to be doing your marketing and to dig deep is when you don't need it. So I encourage for us, and I know why. It's not as simple as, well, I don't want to because I don't need it. It's probably because of time, right? And I totally get that. And that's the whole point of the system of today. We're going to be talking about how to do more with less in terms of developing a system. Okay, so question number two, and we'll really quickly get through these. So by the way, with this, you can select more than one. So I'd like for, and remember, answer these honestly. And as you answer these honestly, I want you to compare, how did you select and how does that compare versus that of your colleagues and peers, potentially your competitors throughout the country. So which of these are you currently creating consistently? Is it social post? Is it email? Is it video, sales leave behinds, or none of these? Okay, so far it's none of these. And remember, you can select more than one. So if you want to, we'll leave this up just for another sec or so. Which of these are you currently creating consistently? Is it none? Is it social, email, video, or sales leave behind? So we'll leave this up for another 5 seconds. Okay, so I see it's a mixed bag across the board. So none, but although more than half of these are none of these. So I will say, I know that's the whole point of us being on today's discussion. So it's nearly 2/3 of these are none of these. So as much as I hate to admit to that, it doesn't surprise me. But these things are important, and I know that we all agree upon that. All right, so I'm just going to look at this for another second or so. Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. So it seems like video's all the way at the bottom. So I'm going to have a surprise for each of you here at the end in terms of the video, so that we can make sure that next time we ask this question, this number is going to be much higher. Okay, gotcha. Okay, last question, then we're going to move on to the actual prepared content. So what's your biggest barrier to a content system? This is just going to be one, right? So is it the time? And don't get hung up on the pillar piece. It's going to make more sense here in just a sec. Don't know what to write about. That to me makes sense. Is it, no one to help with distribution? In other words, we create the content, but we don't know how to actually push it out across all of our channels. Or you don't have a consistent rhythm, meaning it's like I do one here, I do one there occasionally, but it's not on a consistent basis. So, what's the biggest barrier? So we'll leave this up for just another sec or so. So what's your biggest barrier to a content system? Don't know what to write about, which is half. I mean, that actually makes sense. And this is where one of the primary things we're going to be talking about here in just a sec. I'm going to define what that pillar piece is here in just a couple of minutes. And in terms of a rhythm or a content, we'll be talking about that. And we'll be talking about that of distribution as well. So, all right. So with that said, let's get back over here. And when we look at that of this treadmill, I don't know if anyone can relate to this. It's perhaps we write something, perhaps we publish it, but then what's happening is a day goes by, a week, a month goes by, or we're scrambling to how do we duplicate that? How do we keep that going with that right frequency, with that right cadence? Keep in mind, whether it's with diet exercise or any of the, we'll call it the business diet or exercise, like what we're talking about today. Remember, frequency, having that consistency is key. It's not just about trying to sprint out of the gate and seeing as to who's going to, win that sprint. Remember, it's more of a marathon as opposed to that sprint. So that's one of the challenges, right? What about this? We just talked about this. I mean, a number of us agreed that, marketing stops the moment that installs pick up. And perhaps some of the reasons why that's the case is because perhaps, perhaps some of the reasons why that's the case is because we're just too busy. We don't have the physical bandwidth to get it done. And perhaps maybe one of the other reasons, which I would say is a big no-no, is like, well, why would I need to market? I'm so busy now. I'm going to pick up marketing again once things slow down. And keep in mind, remember, methodical and steady marketing wins the race. Keep that in mind, right? And then, it's what about this? Starting from zero whether it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, it's once again goes back to not having a system and just doing things in piecemeal, things in that regard. And by the way, I know this goes without saying, but this is not just about marketing. Having a system is incredibly important across all aspects of our business because it's all about repeatable systems. Yes, during the sales process, during the installation process, we are in fact developing custom solutions, but these custom solutions are built on a proven framework. In other words, we're not going to, let's say we've got our core technology partners that we work with. Our sales team is trained on them. We've got them priced based on from leadership and from finance to make sure that we're profitable. Technicians, from the installation, from the maintenance, from the upgrades. Everyone's trained on this. Can you imagine running a security business whereas the end user dictates, or let's just say every single sale is a completely different set of technology partners? Like clearly that would not work. So anyway, let me keep moving forward here. So, the real reason why content in terms of content from the marketing standpoint fails, it's not just about not having time, which is our worst enemy. It's about the absence of a system. So in terms of the 5 key things we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about a framework that is like the multiplication framework. It's a framework that will uh, uh, that will grow immensely. That will that as we put it into place, it will be more of a force multiplier. We're going to be breaking down content, right? What does the actual content break down? What does it consist of, and things in that regard? We'll be talking about a 30-minute weekly rhythm. We'll talk about what a content pillar is, as well as what that proper structure and why it's important. And then we're going to be talking about, last but definitely not least, is not about just vanity metrics, but we want to be talking about developing content that resonates with that of your pipeline. And in other words, your existing customer and your potential customers as well. All right. So when we look at this overall principle, when we look at this framework at a high level, right? And we get into the multiplication mindset. The key here is two, right? It's like we create once and we use that framework every single time, and it's used everywhere. And a little bit more about what we mean by that is one pillar piece. We're going to define the pillar piece in just a sec. It's that source of truth. It is what is going to resonate with that of the end users. And by the way, I know on the vendor side, we've got a few individuals that are with us, excuse me, on that of the vendor side as well. And I know that I'm using a lot of examples that are going to be relative to like the integrator alarm dealer, but do not think, and I know you all know this, so I don't mean to be 101 with you here, but keep in mind, these things resonate with you as well. The key here is, let's just say if we're a vendor, we're not necessarily in a local territory. Our territory happens to be the entire country, perhaps even out of the country. So these principles are holding true with you as well. So what happens is, with that pillar piece, which we're going to define here shortly, all of the many assets, so we're going to talk about this in just a sec. This is where they're derived from. Like that pillar is the foundation, and all of these other pieces of content come as a result. And what happens is we're not reinventing the wheel, we're not recreating. It's like we make this one investment, and the key here is that one investment helps to maximize that of the distribution. Now, in terms of the framework, and then we're going to get to defining what this content pillar is here in just a sec. It's this 1 to 20 framework. So it's like we look at one pillar piece, and that one piece equals 20 plus distribution ready assets. And here's an example of this, right? This could include a number of social posts, perhaps some emails. And by the way, I've got numbers here in terms of 5 and 3 and 1 and so on and so forth. Keep in mind, these can be more than that, dependent upon, let's just say, dependent upon what that pillar piece is and things in that regard. But if you follow this as a overall recipe and you make it your own with each pillar piece, the point being here is because remember, a few minutes ago, a number of us said one of the biggest challenges I have is I don't know what to write about. And we're going to talk about that. Ironically, it was either one of my recent or one of my upcoming articles in Marketing Matters. I talk about how we have access to an infinite amount of content ideas, but we're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes. Keep in mind this one long form video can also equal a number of different short clips, perhaps 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. We can have graphics that can be in social, that can have quotes in terms of things that are educational. We're going to talk about that here in just a sec. We can have, various SEO related pages or blogs. And when I talk, and we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive, but I won't get too deep into this right now. And various sales assets. A little earlier this morning, it's funny. Not funny, haha, but it was I received a call from a group and a group that is one of the first customers. I shouldn't say one of the first, maybe one of the first 40, 50 groups that we worked with. And the last time he and I text back and forth was in 2014. So it's what, 12 years. So I'm like, wait a minute. I won't reference it by name, but we caught up for 2, 3 minutes because I let him know I was prepping for today's webinar. And I look forward to catching up. I don't know I don't know if you're on right now, but if you are, it was great catching up for a couple minutes. And I do look forward to speaking with you either later today or tomorrow. But my point with this is he'd referenced the fact that he needs all these things that we're talking about today. He's like, Dave, I need help with all those things. And I'm sorry I've been absent for the last 12 plus years, but here we are. And I joked with him about, remember, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. And guess what? The second best day to plant a tree is today. So here we are. So, keep in mind, like, you've got weeks of content from from that of all of these assets and things in that regard. Okay. So let's talk about what is a pillar piece. So a pillar piece is going to be, I won't say a white paper, but it's going to be a big concept. And it's going to be something that is of substance or it's substantial. It's something that is really important to that of your end user. Perhaps let's say you're working with Resi, SMB, medium to large to enterprise end users. Perhaps you're working with dealers or integrators. What are their biggest, what keeps them up late at night? And what are their big challenges? If we're talking about security versus fire, we're talking about, let's just say that let's say that, you're in a jeweler as an example. You've got to make sure for insurance purposes, you've got to have certain key qualities and characteristics with that of your security company. They've got to have special monitoring facilities that they're working with. They've got to be specially licensed and, various ULs. I forget the names of the special UL and things in that regard, but we've got to have all of those kinds of things. When it comes to fire, as we all know, those of us that do fire, we like fire. Why? Because it's all about compliance. Number one. Number two, there's a lot less fire competition versus that of security. And from the security standpoint, depending upon what aspect of security we're talking about, we're really helping to, there's even opportunities in security to generate a positive ROI when we talk about, remote video guarding, or we talk about / like remote guarding, proactive video monitoring, things in this regard. So, keep in mind, we want to talk about these big in-depth challenges. And how it works is, we can either create this big article / case studies or an in-depth video about this. Perhaps we can even do a webinar about this or this big how-to guide. So we create this, call it this pillar piece. We're going to talk about breaking, how to create this here in just a few minutes. But what it doesn't include is going to be like the short little post or a photo or product announcement. Because the key here is, and we're going to talk about this, is we want to make that big investment on developing this piece. It's like, for example, like today's webinar, we're talking about, content multiplication, how we do more with less, the fact that it's hard to, there's this different sub segments to today. So like today's webinar, there's a lot of, bite-sized chunks, whether they're, 20, 30-second videos, social posts to be had, like big pieces of the puzzle. And that's the whole point is, and from the security standpoint, we want to have those. We're gonna dig a little deeper into this in just a sec. So let's talk about, speaking of digging a little deeper, let's talk about an example here. So let's picture that of a fire and life safety company. And let's reference the fact they do like local independent do great work, but like their content's just scattered. It's not like there's not any consistency to it. It's not integrated. It's not telling a story, right? Like when you get into, I'm not like a huge book reader. You know, I do read books on occasion, but I'm not a huge one. But when you look at whether you're watching a movie, whether you're reading a book, you know, they're purposely you set the stage, you get that hook out of the gate. You know, then you've got a sequential chapters and things in that regard, or various scenes or parts throughout the movie, and then you've got the climax or the finish of the actual movie or the book that really helps to put everything together. And that's the key is we want to make sure that our content is doing these things over time. So, okay, so like as an example, let's give an example of a pillar piece, right? So, you know, let's talk about knowing that, remember, and keep in mind for the vendor perspective, instead of what building owners, it's like what do security companies, you know, need to know about X? It's like this big, the equivalent of a white paper, but I'm not insinuating we need to write one. So in this particular case, like, you know, what building owners need to know about fire alarm inspection compliance. And, you know, yes, some building owners and some property managers, things in that regard, you know, they're going to understand how these things work. But, you know, look, things change, right? I think NFPA either just happened or it's about to happen. I think it just happened. And, you know, for those of us that are involved in fire that were at NFPA, you know, we're listening to education. What's the latest? What's the trends? Where are we going? You know, taking into consideration all of the, you know, all of these guidelines and compliance, making sure that you're in compliance. Like this is part of being a fire alarm company, making sure that you're up to date on the national basis as well as locally within your state, as well as the local jurisdictions, you know, with the HGH and things in that regard. So the key here is these are all things that like you potentially possess here. And maybe perhaps it's a contingent of a few of you. And the key here is putting together this pillar piece that is that just that can't miss reference guide, that can't miss reference video, that webinar that's telling the story so that if you are a building owner, if you are a property manager, the key here is you're here to educate and to make sure that they're aware of the why, what, how, who, what, when, and etc. And as a result of creating this piece, what we can do is we can have a number of assets as a result of that, right? In terms of social piece, you know, perhaps like a 3 email sequence, you know, leveraging, I know it's hard to see me, but leveraging that of your mobile device to that of developing that of a you know, like some short clips, things in that regard. It's landing pages. It's because remember, you know, keep in mind whether it's through Google or through the answer engines, i.e., like the Chat GPTs of the world, you want to make sure that when someone is searching for you, you're showing up in the results. Part of that is making sure that not just from the human perspective, but from these answer engines, the search engines, they're perceiving you as that local authority and things in that regard. So you know, I'm not gonna, I know we're a little up against time here, so I'm not gonna ask right now, but if anyone does have, uh, you know, I guess I'll ask a question. You know, have you ever reused one piece of content more than once? You know, or things in that regard? Feel free to leave that in the chat. Okay, so Heather, thank you. Just started social media. Okay, I've just started social media at this capacity industry, so I haven't had a chance to reuse content. I'm still learning and figuring out when to post. Okay, well, Heather, welcome to our industry. And by the way, since you're new, maybe a few others can also welcome Heather to our industry. I will say, for what it's worth, Heather, once you get in, you're not going to be able to get out. It's like it's interesting. It's I don't mean to get up into tangents, everyone. But you know, it's interesting how, you know, when I talk with individuals about how you got started in the industry, it's like, you know, I try to get out and they pulled me back in. I will say thank you, Isabella. Appreciate that. And what I will say is, uh, you know, there are also a number of other webinars. If you go on to our homepage on the, I think it's the top right hand side, there's a button that says webinars. I think this is webinar 35 or 36. I think this is webinar 35. So actually, the good news is next month is going to be a big milestone for us. It's going to be 3 years of doing this on a consistent basis. But we have a number of others that you may want to see as to which topics are going to be helpful for you. Uh, so awesome. Thank you, Heather. Uh, and look forward to getting to know you a little better as well. And if there's anything that I can do to help, please let me know, and we can have a quick chat, and I can help get you off on the right start. So, you know, in terms, and I started talking about this a little earlier, but in terms of why we as local, independent, licensed and insured alarm companies, security companies, integrators, etc. Like, why are we well positioned for this? And I say this because, for the most part, without me looking at everyone, I don't think that we have many that are going to be from like the ADTs, like meaning from the nationals or what have you. And clearly, like we have, local independent, we've got the yeah, I hate to use this term, but like the trunk slammers, or we've got, the nationals and the DIYs. And this could be on the commercial or the resi perspective. The reason or how we're well positioned for this is keep in mind, most of us, and when I say most of us, I'm not saying just us, but we have a representation, let's say like an ISC West or perhaps an ESX a few weeks back. We're sitting in classes, we're perhaps we have to do the CEUs and things in that regard. We're getting trained from our technology partners. Like we have that technical expertise that our customers don't. And I say this, do not take that for granted. Do not take for granted that everyone knows, because look, some of us, I won't say many, but some of us are multi-generation. There's some security companies that have been around for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years, and they've went from generation to generation. And every single day, there's more and more learning. And the key here is those things that we've learned, those principles that we have, it's important for us in our content to help get that good news out. And it's not just about, to just drum up more business, but we want to build that know, like, and trustability. It's really, really important. So don't take for granted that expertise that you have. Your customers don't have that same level of expertise, and we've got to make sure that we're educating on that. That's really, really important. Look, we've earned that trust. And by the way, remember, in many cases, your best prospect is your existing customer, because someone that's already done business with you is going to be much more likely to do business with you again. And I'll just say this more rhetorically. When I have one-on-one conversations with security companies, and let's just say that there's 8 things that we do. I'm just making this number up. I've not ever had a conversation where their average end user that they're working with is going to be over 4 or 5 of the things that they're doing. And I'm not insinuating that we only spend our time with existing customers, but do not sleep on the existing customer. Remember, the more that we layer services, the more value we deliver, the more value we receive in terms of integration and RMR. But it's not just that. What's the dirty word in our industry? It starts with an A and ends with an N. Attrition. That dirty word. What we want to do is we want to have minimal attrition, and we want to have maximum RMR per end user customer that's with us for the years to come. So really, really important. And keep in mind, when we compare ourselves versus the nationals, or when I say the truck slammers, and I mean that with respect. Okay, maybe I don't love. All right, let me quit trying to be funny. You own your market, like you're local from the community for the community. And keep in mind, on the vendor side, even though it's on a nationwide basis, we all know how small our big industry is. Everyone knows everyone. And the key here is, and I'll say this hopefully maybe for the last time, the know, like, and trustability. Remember, you may be a video surveillance vendor, you may be a monitoring vendor or anywhere in between. And I got to tell you, it's not easy getting dealers or integrators to switch from who they're presently with to ourselves, even if our solution just makes more sense value-wise in terms of not just pricing, but the values they would deliver. So it's almost as if we're asking someone to, divorce their families. I mean, it's not easy. And this is why consistency with what we're talking about today and building your personal brand as a leader of your company. And by the way, this holds true across the entire ecosystem, as well as, being top of mind, because remember, we've got the attention span that's less than that of a goldfish. All these things are critically important. So you want to make sure that we're owning that. Now, in terms of let's now transition really quickly to the content breakdown, right? We're going to dig deep into this, right? Like one piece could potentially equal that of 20 assets. So let's start here. So remember, we started off with that big piece. And, on a side note, I would imagine we're all familiar with a blog, and I've joked but not joked about the fact that like a podcast is the new blog, a webinar is the new blog. And I got to tell you, I'm asking this rhetorically, although feel free to enter in the chat. Like, when's the last time you've come across an integrator or an alarm dealer or a fire alarm company that has their own podcast, that does webinars, that does live in-person events that they record. Like almost, I won't say zero, but very few and far between. It's a lot of work, but I'll tell you what, when you are developing this, it is not just for the individuals that are watching this live, but it's for the countless others that will watch this afterwards. It also provides, as we're talking about today, an infinite amount of content. So my point with this is, you know, keep in mind, let's say locally in your market, which other alarm companies and on the vendor side, which of your competitors are doing this on a consistent basis? I'm telling you, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, but the second best day is today. Strongly consider doing these things and don't work. Perfection is the enemy of getting things done. Okay, sorry. Moving forward, I know I get off into tangents here, and I know we're a little pressed for time here, but I'm going to keep going. Okay, so here's a five insight method in terms of like one pillar piece can potentially pull out five standalone insights and even more, right? Can have a stat or stats that are surprising and that like may stand out. It's like, remember a few minutes ago when we were talking about, I was asking you questions. Many of us may say, okay, that makes sense, but there may have been a stat that's like, wait a minute, I thought it was the only one, and that's not the case. I would have thought it would have been the other way around. So there could be that surprising stat. There could be that of a misconception that in fact we correct. Perhaps, whether it's the channel or whether it's end users, they may have that misconception. And in fact, what we're doing is we're making sure that we're correcting. We're letting them know exactly how things are. We're talking about an actual proven process. And keep in mind, it's not just about it's not about how it benefits us. It's about how that proven process benefits our customer base, whether it's the end user or that of the channel. It's what's the result. And it's not about us pounding ourselves in the chest and, oh, here I am and I'm great. It's not about that. It's keep in mind whether it's the end user or the channel, the challenges that they face and the solutions to those challenges can resonate with others. So the key is talking about it. And then it's of course forward looking. It's like, hey, let's if we had a crystal ball, where do we think we're going? Those are the fun things, those opinion pieces. And sometimes it can be a little controversial, but you know what? That's what helps to get a little bit more awareness and things in that regard. Okay, so next, email. This is where we talk about, why it matters. We get a little deep into why things matter. And we're repurposing certain things. So it's like an example of this. And keep in mind, you don't necessarily need to use this as an exact blueprint. I want you to remember, it's like, I'm an amateur chef at home. And because as you all know, I work my rear end off. And when I get home, it's a little therapeutic, not every day, but maybe once every couple of weeks, I'll say to my wife, all right, you take a break, let me make some food. And I usually don't follow the recipe to a T. I try and make it my own. Sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's really good. I get lucky, and sometimes I'm like, all right, let's throw it out. Let's go get some food. But my point with this is don't feel as if you have to follow this exactly. I want you to make this your own. So, why it matters section, that could be email number one in terms of a sequence. Like, because remember, the whole point of us is we want to create these things once, and then we ultimately distribute them. So we have these distributed throughout that of the month. So that it's not overbearing and things in that regard. Perhaps there's a step-by-step section, and that could be like email number two. Perhaps what was the result? What was the outcome? Like, and that section of the overall piece that can be repurposed in section three. And if you look at this, there's methodology, there's purpose behind this. The email one helps to bring some awareness because, for example, I may not know that there's a challenge and what you're doing, or maybe I know, but like, it's like you setting that at the right time. It's like, I don't know if you all have heard the old adage of hard work creates, hard work creates good luck. And my point being here, it's all a numbers game. And as you remind them, so, oh yeah, that's right. And then what's happening is you're educating them about, about why it's important, the fact that there are in fact solutions to that. And then when you get at number three, you're demonstrating how you've done this for others. And then what that does is that makes it so seamless. And by the way, I know we've all done this. Like, look, I know if I were to ask, I'm not going to ask, so I'm asking this more rhetorically, so you don't have to respond to this. But like, most of us, if not all of us, are getting a lot of our business from word of mouth and referrals. Some of us have integrated marketing campaigns that are already running that are helping to augment and to significantly increase that of that. My point being here is when you have a referral or an inbound lead, this is someone that's going to have a higher conversion rate and they're going to layer more services. So my point being here is when we go and we utilize this, what happens is, and I know this because this is what we do on a day in, day out basis, is the end users that are coming in, the dealers that are coming in on the vendor side, they're coming more pre-positioned to buy. They're asking better questions. They're already almost pre-sold, if that makes sense. So it's like, we have 3 emails from one source and you're not having to write anything from scratch. I know that was one of the challenges that was discussed during the question section. Let's talk about for a video. So like we record this once and then we have clips that go everywhere. So it's like, keep in mind, I know right now today, this is going to be approximately like an hour long video. And I'm not insinuating you've got to do an hour long. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. It could be an hour, but you record a video. And it could be, I know once again, it's hard to see me, but it could literally be on that of your phone. All of us have this. And yes, I'm not going to grab it right now, but I've got a selfie stick. You can get the fancy ones. You don't have to have them. You can get the $5, $10 ones from Amazon. You could record your video and don't worry about perfection. But what happens is it's going to be your long form video. And then from there, it could be as little as 2 to 4 to even 8 to 10 little clips. And these could be 5, 10-second clips. These could be 30, 60, 90-second clips that are talking about the various stages. Remember, the awareness, that of the education, that of the conversion. They can be all those different stages. You want to have them posted in a particular sequence. Now, here's where things really get interesting, by the way, is there are tools. Like, for example, if you upload that to YouTube, there are tools that are free. There are tools that are paid. We happen to use some paid tools, but there are free tools as well. Whereas you upload the video, and let's say on YouTube as an example, and there's YouTube will automatically transcribe that video so you can get the entire content. So the whole point here is instead of you writing a blog from scratch, it's a lot easier to make edits than to stare at this blank screen. Well, I'll say for myself, that's definitely the case. So by the way, this is not just for the blog content. This is for all of the other aspects. And that's why, once again, video is really powerful because it's not just that. Like, when you're hearing me today, as you're hearing me live, or whether you're listening to me on demand, you get to hear the fluctuations of my voice. You get to know a little bit more about my personality. And I'm purposely not just blah, 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 because I don't want to put anyone to sleep, including myself. And my point being here is, this is why I highly encourage, and I got to tell you what, I've shared this before and I'll be brief about this, is 15, 20, 30 minutes before this, believe it or not, I'm pacing. I've got this pit in my stomach. I won't say I'm nervous, but I'm a little anxious. And frankly, I feel like that helps to energize me. I don't want you to feel, well, okay, Dave gets, he does this every single month. He speaks at all the conferences. Like, look, I tell you what, you should see one last quick funny story. All right, I'll be brief about this. When we first started in 2011, it was just my business partner and I, Alex and I. And I think we had just come back from ISC West. We picked up our first customer. We had a number of groups in the pipeline. And I think I did a couple of videos. And when I tell you to do like a 1 or 2 minute video, it took me like 50 to 100. I don't know, maybe not 100 takes, but it took me at least 50 takes. And Alex is like, just record the video. I'll edit it. My point being here is I'm hearing him like laughing at me saying, Dave, I can't see you. I can't see you the rest of the day. I've got your voice in my head because he's editing my stuff. My point with that is, like, now I try my best to get things done in one shot, although sometimes it takes me a few shots when I'm not concentrating. My point with this is perfection's the enemy of getting things done. Like, just get started. Remember, raw is real. You don't have to be, I don't view myself as being a professional. I'm having a conversation with my friends and colleagues and new potential friends and colleagues. And just do what you do best and don't overthink it. And if you say an or if you make a mistake, no big deal. We're all human. Just get started, like today. Okay. So the sales leave behind, like these things are important. I'm not saying these are the end all be all, but remember, in marketing, it's all about all these pieces of the puzzle. They're more of a force multiplier. And without you having to recreate this from scratch or start from the beginning, you can leverage that pillar piece to have information from there to help you. For example, this could be like a a one page, it could be a checklist, it could be an action guide, depends on what the pillar piece is. It's like how to stay in compliance. It's talking about how to generate a ROSI, right? A return on security investment. The whole point here is you want to hook individuals, to evoke curiosity, to get them to want to learn more, things in that regard. There could be a half dozen points that are educating upon the benefits and how that would work. And then ultimately, these are things that can be used on your website. They can be used in your social. They can be used during your sales proposals. They can be used as a reference guide. They can be used in follow-ups. Like, and keep in mind, we don't want this to be like super salesy. We want this to be once again educational and to help position you. And this is really important. Everything that we do is all about positioning you as that local or that national authority, depending upon where you are in that of the ecosystem. By the way, believe it or not, this is one of our industry's most underutilized assets. Now, next, when we talk about SEO, and when we say SEO, we don't just mean search engine optimization. We're talking about search everywhere optimization. So this is for Google, which is still where the lion's share of search traffic's coming from. But the answer engines are starting to explode in terms of their popularity and their utilization. So the key here is when we say, by the way, the long tail landing page, what we mean by that is, let's just use the phrase access control. So perhaps if someone does a search on Google, we all may say, and let's say that access control is one of the things that we do. We may say, Dave, I'd like to show up locally in my market for that phrase. And I'd like to actually pay with Google Ads PPC for that. And I can see the logic, but we'd say, wait a minute, not so fast. And here's why. It's too general. We don't know. Is someone looking for a company like you? Or are they researching access control? Now, in fact, Google's going to think that we are researching access control, and their first few results are going to be these topical authority blogs that are based on what is access control. In other words, this is someone that's like researching all the way at the top of the sales funnel, not someone that's like, I know I need an access control. Now, let's contrast that with, let's use our good friends at NAPCO. Let's say I'm a business and I've got an existing NAPCO access control system. And what I do is I go to ChatGPT or I go to Google and I do a search for NAPCO access control authorized dealer in and insert your local city, or maybe perhaps you add near me to that. Remember, Google knows where we are based on our IP address. So they know where we're based. They'll serve local results in terms of ads and the organic results. So my point being here is, when we create that topical page, keep in mind we're going to be educating the market, and these are big topics. So what we want to do is we can create pages, landing pages on our website, and what this will do is we'll build our credibility with that of Google and the answer engines. And as actual real humans, real users are researching that, it's going to carefully position them to it's going to carefully position us, I should rather say, as that of that local authority and things in that regard. Here's some examples. Keep in mind, once again, as I gave a long scenic route around that, but we want to make sure that we're focused not on the generic keywords, but the long tail searches. And keep in mind, what this does is, once again, it pre-positions them more to buy as opposed to just wanting to window shop, so to speak. Okay, so next. So let's talk about an actual pillar. Let's actually break it down. So here's two examples, right? So like number one, the overall theme with number one is why small businesses are upgrading to that of remote gardening in 2026. And perhaps maybe we're based in Los Angeles, maybe we're based in Dallas, maybe we're based in the tri-state area. We want to hyper personalize, hyper localize that in that of our market. Next, another example could be, when should a business hire guards versus remote gardening? Let's say, for example, we're a hybrid business. Perhaps maybe we're a guard company and we provide remote gardening. Perhaps we're only a guard company. Perhaps maybe we're only an electronic or physical security company. This still would hold true. And by the way, you can have it locally or personalized in your area, and perhaps to 2026. or it could be like the definitive guide to when you should hire, when a business should hire this versus that, as an example. And if you really think about that, this is where you can give a long video or a webinar and start talking about this. And what I would do is you don't have to necessarily have fancy slides like the way that I do. I mean, you can, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to. Like, have your bullets so you know what you're talking about. Because look, we are all, well, I'll say you all, I won't say myself, but all of you, and I mean this in a good way, by the way, are all professionals. You all are experts at what you do. If you have your just talking points, you're going to be in great shape. And you're just educating and getting the hook, educating and ultimately talking about solutions and sharing stories about how you're solving those challenges for that, of whether it's for the dealers that you service or for that of the end users that you're working with. And remember, we start off perhaps with that long form video. We've got short clips that come as a result of that. And by the way, there are tools, like if you want to jot a couple of these things down, like from the video standpoint, look, I have the luxury of having a full-time dedicated video editor. And I also have, I think, 4 or 5 other members of our team that do video editing. You don't have to be a professional video editor to edit these days. There are third-party tools. One of the ones that we use is Descript, and that's Descript, Descript. You can Google and have, video editing tools or clip generators, things in that regard. There are tools that can help you. You don't have to know all the fancy technology tools and apps and things in that regard to be able to do this. Social posts, same thing here. Just once again, what are some of the key points that you want to leverage from that of your social? That we already talked about the 3 email sequence. You've got quote graphics, actual pages on your site, assets. And this is where an example of this one pillar, when you fully break it down, can equal 20 plus short form pieces of content. So like, you're investing a little time. And by the way, this is great content, once again, for your website. These are, and remember, as you go through this 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, some of these things may be, we get to the 2027 version of something you've already broken down, because technology continues to evolve and you're not having to start over from scratch. And this is the key here. Like, I'll share this really quickly. For us, we have things pre-planned out like 6 to 12 months in advance in terms of our webinars. Like, we don't just come up with our topic every single month. And there are some times where we have certain topics that we think are a little more topical and we leapfrog and things in that regard. But my point with this is just, and it's not just for marketing, it's not just for content creation, but also with that of all the things that you do in business. All those things, systems planning is all really, really important. So, I hear this all the time. Speaking of time, I don't have time. And there may be this like misconception of the fact that, and I'm not saying that these things could not take hours per week, but it doesn't have to, because remember, I referenced this earlier. Perfection is the enemy of getting things done. It doesn't have to take hours every week to get achieved what we're talking about today. Like, literally, you could spend 20 to 30 focused minutes and make some serious damage, if that makes sense, towards achieving our goals. And remember, the principles, the system, you build it once, and then what happens is the system itself does that of the heavy lifting. So, keep in mind, we're going to talk just for a minute or two about that of the 30-minute weekly rhythm, right? So consistency is the key here. Now, in terms of why most systems or content systems, and we can even remove content, why most systems die, is because it's not a system problem. It's a system problem. It's not that of a motivation problem. And as we talked about before, we get busy. We're starting, stopping, and we're not being inconsistent. That's the challenge. Remember, methodical and steady wins the race. The protected 30-minute time block is critical. Like, I would highly recommend for you today, before you move on to your next project, we're about to wrap up here in a couple minutes, block off 30 minutes so that you know that, like, and treat this as if you're meeting with a prospect. Treat this as if you are, because keep in mind, perhaps, this could be for some of the things that you do on LinkedIn, things in that regard. Block off some time today for the next 2 to 3 months. See as to what this actually does. Here's a quick little content calendar you can look at. So like, once you create that pillar piece, you could deploy a LinkedIn post from the pillar. You could send an email on Tuesday to that of your database. You could send a second LinkedIn post. By the way, Be a one percenter. A one percenter on LinkedIn is if you post once per week or greater, you're in the top 1% of LinkedIn users as a FYI. So it's not too late. On Thursday, you could deploy on your socials a video clip. And then perhaps on Friday, you could send another LinkedIn post and email number 2. Now, really quickly, uh, you want to make sure that you are leveraging technology tools as well as not just like piecemealing things. So you don't want to be doing all these things individually. Like, and I'm not going to go through all the tools right now, but even like on LinkedIn, you can schedule posts. We're going to talk about this in just a second, and we're just about to wrap up. There's also third-party tools for other social media, like Buffer, uh, Social Pilot. You can Google social media scheduling tools. HubSpot, like CRMs, a lot of the CRMs do these things. With emails, you schedule these, like you don't just work on one at a time, work on these in batches. You don't have to be fancy, all these graphics and things in that regard. You want to be helpful and useful in terms of helping that of your audience, because you want to be known, liked, and trusted as that authority, so that when they're ready to transition from their current provider or they need your help, who are they going to come to? Who they know, like, and trust, which is us. They're not going to ask for a referral. They're not going to go to Google. So let's say that you don't have a marketing team. Perhaps the owner or someone in senior leadership can, put some notes together and thoughts together about that pillar content. And then ultimately, as like the one of the main ambassadors of your organization, make sure that you're on LinkedIn. And by the way, not just to post, but to engage with others. Perhaps if you've got an admin or a VA or someone that can help, ultimately, once these content pieces are created, they can help to format as well as schedule and then physically distribute that. And the same thing would hold true with that of part-time. I mean, look, we just started summer. If you're watching this live, there may be some individuals that are interested in internship and things in that regard. So, this doesn't have to be a full-time thing out of the gate. We can start off modestly and ultimately look to invest more time as we're starting to see some results that are coming from that. Okay, really quickly, as we're wrapping up here in the next 2-3 minutes. When we're creating content, it is not just about the vanity metrics. We want to create content that moves prospects in that sales pipeline, in that sales funnel. We don't just want to get that of the vanity metrics, because keep in mind, and I'm not saying, look, these things are important, but my point here is likes, impressions, followers, comments, reshares, reposts, etc. Those are all great things, but that does not pay the bills. Phone calls, inquiries, when you have consultations, when you get someone to say yes, when you get someone to switch from technology partner A to yourself, that's what helps to move the needle. And the key here is, this is why we want to do things that are helping to build your brand, but we also want to make sure that we're measuring them to make sure that it's resulting in inquiries that are coming more pre-positioned to buy, if that makes sense. So, really quickly, when we talk about content, there's three overall jobs, right? To attract, to educate, and to convert. Now, one thing to take into consideration is most companies are actually skipping the educate, and most of their content that they publish is going to be about the attract and convert. And those are very important, don't get me wrong, but you want to focus your efforts here on educate. You want to have a little bit of the attract, you want to have a modest amount of the convert, and most of it wants to be educate. And the reason being is that's what your users are looking for. Now, depending upon what you're doing, you may have to focus more on the attract/educate, that aspect of it, depending upon what it is that you do. If what you do is more of a newer category in our space, make sure that you're auditing things, right? If you're taking it, like, what doesn't get measured does not have improvement. So you want to make sure, take into consideration the last 5, 10, 20 pieces of content. What happened? Like, what's getting more engagement? As you have individuals that are reaching out to you, or they're telling you how they came across you and things in that regard. So keep all these things in mind. And when you look at this from like a monthly standpoint, you can have all of these weeks, and I'm going to skip through some of this, so I'll leave this just up for another sec. In terms of the next, and I cannot implore each of us, and this includes myself. I'm very fortunate that I have a team that helps me to produce a lot of things that we publish and we push out. But I'll tell you what, Even if I didn't, that would not be an excuse. I cannot emphasize enough. Perfection is the enemy of getting started, getting things done. Our next step is like just this week, put some thought, like start jotting down what are the big things that are, what are the I wrote about this once again recently in Marketing Matters and Security Business Magazine, but like what are your best customers asking you? Like every single time you have technicians that are coming in or in the morning you have meetings, it's like talk about the previous day or talk about that day with sales and with technicians. Like, what are the objections? What are the questions that are being asked? Like, why do they select us? What are their current issues? On the channel, on the vendor side, like, same thing holds true, but relative to that, my point, jot all those things down. See as to what, where you think the pillars can come from. And from there, I'm telling you, you have an infinite amount of content opportunities. So I implore you, just get started today. In terms of key takeaways, as we talked about, our problem's not time, it's the absence of having a system. And keep in mind, one really strong pillar piece, it could equal, 20 plus assets across 5 plus channels. And if you block out that 30 minutes per week, it's going to really put you in that right rhythm, in that right cadence that you're winning and winning big. And keep in mind consistency, right? Methodical and steady wins the race. Consistency is key and it's critical and it's important. And remember, as we do this more and more, we're going to get even better at that. And if you have ultimately you're just creating a lot of content that's not moving your pipeline, well, then it's not really marketing. It's not achieving our goals. So I know we're up against time here. Let's see here. Okay, I'm not going to reference you by name. Should we only post on LinkedIn or other platforms? Ideal to post as well. So if anyone has any burning questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I know we only have time for perhaps one or two. In terms of so what I would say is I would not, if knowing that we have very limited time, I would not create unique content for each and every single social platform. I would see where are your customers based? Are they on YouTube? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, et cetera, et cetera? I would recommend for you to post where your customers are. Uh, Keep in mind there are tools where you create content once, you preload that of all of your social platforms. You click submit, not in a literal sense, but and then it deploys across all of them. So what I would recommend is I would look to build all of your social company platforms. Perhaps it may be X as well. I mean, I will say for us, we get the biggest bang for our buck with LinkedIn. We are exclusively B2B and we are specialized. We only work with the industry, as you know. Uh, I would recommend, let's make the presumption that you're a traditional security company that works with, let's say you're, 2/3 commercial, a third resi and SMB. I would focus on LinkedIn, but I would also include Facebook and Instagram. As you have more and more time, there are certain types of content that resonate and do well with certain social platforms. But to start, I would try, Rome was not built in one day. So I would focus on multiple, but using LinkedIn, even if you're only residential, keep in mind, um, individuals that own homes, that control builders, they're on LinkedIn. So to me, but I would not only, last thing on this is I would not just post on LinkedIn. I would also post on that of not just from my company page, but also from that of the personal profiles as well. So as we're wrapping up, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. For those of you that have stuck around, uh, I've got a cheat sheet for your multiplication cheat sheet. Download this reference guide. You don't have to enter in your information. Scan this QR code, and you can download that of the content multiplication cheat sheet. I'm going to leave this up for another 3, 2, 1. A big thanks to that of our sponsors, NAPCO and Recognize. Really, really thankful. Big thanks to our team. And most importantly, big thanks to each and every single one of you. As we're wrapping up, I want to announce our next webinar that's going to take place on July 28th from 10 to 11 Pacific time, which is 1 to 2 Eastern time. So the QR code's there to scan. So we're going to talk about lights, camera, leads. So we're going to talk about video. So I know once again, it's hard to see me, but we're going to talk about video and how we can leverage video. By the way, this is going to be a great session, especially if we're going to be leveraging video for that of our content pillars. And keep in mind, by the way, video is not just for it's not just for that of the pillars, but it can be for short individual clips and pieces as well. So thank you, Jerry. Appreciate your feedback. And Kevin, yes, there will be a recording available of this. We'll get this over to you and to our audience. Oh, awesome. Thank you, Isabel. Appreciate that. So as we wrap things up, sorry I kept you just a few extra minutes, but really appreciate everyone being here. I look forward to seeing you at an upcoming event. It was great to see many of you at ESX a few weeks back. And until next time, make it a great day.